Welcome everybody. Today we have here in New Europe studio in Place Jourdain, British ambassador to Belgium, Jonathan Brenton. Welcome.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to meet you here. We are going to talk first about trade relations between Belgium and UK. We have a lot of important British players, British lobbies here in Brussels. How do you interact with this important group?
Well, Belgium is our 6th largest market for UK exports, so it's a big and important market for us. And there's a variety of British companies here. I think with you mentioned the lobbying business, which is obviously an important business. We tend to do less with lobbyists. They're part of what I would describe as the bubble around the institutions, an important economic bubble. They're very active members of our Chamber for Commerce, which I'm delighted to support the British Chamber here. What we tend to do on the export side is work with smaller companies who are exporting for the first time. So, for example, with our events, we're promoting British food or British beer. And then we do a lot of work on investment because they're major Belgian investors in the UK, companies like UCB in pharmaceuticals or InBev in beer, or a company like Rectorcell, for example, which does construction materials. And it's a very important part of our work because we need in the UK to stay competitive. We cannot win the global race, as our Prime Minister calls it, without exporting more. And Belgium is a wonderful place for companies to begin exporting. You know, if you're a small company, you won't necessarily start in Indonesia. Indonesia is a great market, of course, but if you're a small company, you'll go somewhere near, it's not too expensive, and it's very easy to operate like this country.
The last European Council was indicating Juncker as President of the Commission. Which are your feelings after this decision was taken in a very unilateral way? Maybe?
Well, I mean, the Prime Minister made very clear that we did not vote for Mr. Juncker, but we accept the decision of the European Council. We will work with Mr. Juncker. The Prime Minister spoke to Mr. Juncker on the telephone on Sunday. We have always worked very constructively with the European Commission. And I think it's worth reminding people that our objections weren't about the person, it's about the process, because we were concerned that this process marks a shifting of power without negotiation through the treaties towards the Parliament. And it's a process that restricted the number of candidates available. And I think we're delighted that this Council is given a mandate to look again at the process for next time, and it's also put on record the need to address some of Britain's concerns about the European Union.
And about British concerns, do you have any expectation for the other? There will be the appointment of the President of the Council. Maybe the Danish Prime Minister will be.
The issue aren't around people; it's around the political economic agenda. And we also think that the areas where the UK can have concerns is areas where all Europe's citizens have concerns. I think the vast majority of Europe's citizens would like to see more economic growth, so they want to see better regulation or more trade deals. I think a large and growing number want to see Europe doing less, doing a smaller number of things better. So I think that's very important, something for the next Commission, and also for those who take the other key jobs to be aware of. And we also have growing concerns around abuse of free movement. We hope that can be addressed within the new Commission, and we're delighted that's in the Council conclusions.
And the British press was very negative about this decision, and was putting maybe in danger the participation of UK to the EU in future referendum. Do you think that it's so dramatic? How was painted by some British press?
Well, things are rarely as dramatic as they are in next day's newspapers. We have a very vigorous press in the UK, and that's a proud part of our democratic tradition. If the Prime Minister wins the next election, he's committed to having a referendum about the European Union, and he's doing that in order to secure British support for EU membership. I think that battle is winnable. I think it depends on the kind of changes we can achieve in the European Union, but I think it's perfectly possible we can do it, and our Prime Minister is absolutely determined to do it.
There is another important issue, the referendum for Scotland. There is now a nouvelle vague, let's say, of separatism. You see also Catalonia. What's your position on this referendum on Scotland? What's your feeling?
Well, the Scottish people will have the right to vote in September. It's a decision for them. And some people in Scotland may say, what do I, as someone who comes from England, have a say in this? I represent a government that strongly and vigorously defends the union with Scotland because we are better together. And I think that's where most people in Scotland think, and I think that's where the vote will end up. And you look at today's latest polls, and that will show you that's the way people are thinking.
So you are positive in a way. You are.
Oh, I'm confident that Scotland will vote to stay within the United Kingdom, and I'm confident because the strongest arguments are those on the side of those who want to keep together.
And in the case that Scotland will be divided from UK, how are you going to work in Brussels, in the institutions, with this situation?
I wouldn't speculate on that because I'm very confident that we're going to win the referendum.
Okay. Some members of the royal family are preparing an important trip here in Belgium. This will have a very symbolic.
The visit of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge in August.
Can you tell us more about this important?
Well, they are coming for the anniversary of the First World War, the outbreak of the First World War, which falls on the 4th of August. They will be going to Liège and to Mons. They're going to Liège as invitations of the Belgian government. There is a big event in Liège drawing together virtually all the countries that took part in the First World War. This is of enormous historic importance. History is something that binds us together. It's also a reminder that for all Europe's tensions and problems, that we have come a long way, and that the peace we have in Europe, Western Europe at least, is very precious and very important to us, and we should celebrate it. And after the big global event in Liège, we are hosting a smaller event in a Commonwealth War Graves Commission cemetery near Mons, where half of the soldiers buried there are German and half are British. And there are a few Irish and Canadians, but it's mostly German and British. That was set up during the First World War. It was a gift from a Belgian farmer, and the Germans, even during the First World War, tended the graves of the British soldiers as well as the German. So it's a great symbol of reconciliation. It will be a sombre evening ceremony. It will be much smaller than the ceremony in Liège, but I think symbolically it will be memorial, commemoration, honouring of the sacrifices that people made in the First World War, and also a signal that we have a much better Europe and a very strong British-German friendship.
Coming back to Belgium, which are the sectors that are for you more important in trade between Belgium and UK, the most important red lines that you are following?
I mean, there are sectors which have, in terms of exports, which are very large in numbers, but we don't have to do that much for. For example, in petrochemicals, there's a huge trade between the UK, particularly around the port of Antwerp. A lot of cars being sold, exported out of the UK via Belgium, but also being sold here. You go around Brussels streets and you'll see a Nissan Qashqai, for example, which is built in Sunderland, or a Mini, or a Jaguar, or a Land Rover, and these are all strengths of the British economy due to foreign investment. With cars, my job tends to be to celebrate British cars by driving one. I drive a Qashqai and I drive a Jaguar for work. But we don't actually have to do that much direct help for the companies. In the food sector, however, we tend to do quite a lot because the food sector tends to be small companies. This is a country that loves food, it loves quality food. So, for example, I was going Kortrijk in a trade fair recently. We bring a number of British companies over. They may be a company with 5 or 6 people, and they may be selling something quite small, like scones or fruit juices. And by encouraging them to come over to the market, by arranging meetings with people who buy food for supermarkets, that helps them get a foothold into this market, but also going on into export. And then on the investment side, we're offering tracking what we call high-value sectors. So we do a lot of work with pharmaceuticals because that generates R&D jobs, IT, there's a very successful cluster of startups in London, but not just in London. Belfast, for example, we have a very successful IT sector. And so that's slightly different.
Another important topic, and then we are going to end, the new European Parliament. What do you think about this new European Parliament, which is a little bit different from the previous one, with more skeptic sentiments, but still a very important numbers for the Socialists and the EPP?
Well, a parliament reflects voters' opinion around Europe. What I would note about this, I think this parliament tells us, and I should say that I'm not a party political diplomat, I represent a government but not parties. I think it shows growing disillusion with European integration that some people are seeing going too fast. And it's not just the parties who have been voted for, but it's the turnout in different countries. And there are countries like Belgium where the turnout is very high. Voting is mandatory. About 95% of people actually vote rather than spoiling their ballot sheets. But in other places, the average, I think, was 43 to 45. Places, others, it was as low as 13%. And that comes back to the discussions we had at the European Council. We feel quite strongly in the UK that the European Parliament does incredibly important work. There's some very hard-working MEPs who do some fantastic work in scrutinising legislation, but that is not necessarily the democratic voice of every European citizen, because most European citizens see their national parliaments and their national governments as their authentic voice. That's where they vote, and that's where they also recognise the politicians.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Jonathan Brenton. Thank you very much to everybody, and don't forget to visit us at the New Europe studio in Place Jourdan.